Hey, welcome back to the BDP channel where I make stuff, break stuff, and fix stuff. First off, a warning. I'm not a professional and this is not an expert how-to video where I explain 5 easy steps or 7 simple tricks. This is something I'm doing on the weekends, hoping to have some fun learning something new and getting to be good at it. The first series is about fixing stuff on the damaged rear fender of my Chevy Blazer. I'm going to be learning the process of metalworking to remove the damage in the panel by just diving right into it, making mistakes, and showing off the mistakes along the way, along with what I hope will be a really nice straight fender ready to be painted in the end. So if you like what you see, like and subscribe so you get notified when the next video comes out. I'm going to start out with just 2 really simple things. One is this dent identified here, which just looks like something that happened before I got the truck, and it was just painted over and filled in with Bondo. And the other thing is this line of body seam where I welded in this patch panel 10 years ago or so. And I've got a couple spots that the weld is not flush, where there's a butt joint between these 2 different panels, and one of them is kind of shifted out, and then there's a weld seam along the edge. All right, so we're going to start on this little dent here, and I can kind of show you how big that dent actually is if I run this straight edge across it. It looks like it's maybe 1/8 of an inch deep or so, and I can't really measure downward because I've got this repair that I know is not correct, and the surface is kind of curved. So, but just generally, it is probably about 1/8 of an inch there too deep, and so it's really just looked like something just pinged it right there. And so that's what we're going to try and take out first. Much better below the center of that dent, but as it gets up towards the top, it's getting a little worse. So I wonder if I need to get some pressure on the back a little higher up instead of in the center. I'm gonna have to try that. I also have a feeling I'm hitting a little bit on these ridges here, so I may not be getting the spot I think I am. I'll have to. Hey, there we go. There's something. Still got this dent. Seems to kind of much more serious dent. It kind of rides up a little bit like that. It kind of starts out really low and then it gets higher up there. So I wonder if we can kind of get some pressure on the top side of that dent, and then because the bottom side looks like it's getting much closer. You also may need to get some tighter. But maybe I need a higher crown. That actually might be the ticket here. Actually, no. The surface is actually pretty close to flush, and this is a pretty high crown. So I don't think I need very much I don't think I need a big high crown dolly, but I wonder, I wonder if my dolly is riding on the back side of this weld that's out, and so it's kind of bridging that gap, and so that's maybe why I'm not able to get much action there. It's a little more serious hammer. Let's see. Yeah, no, I'm not on the weld here, so. Be convinced that's different, but I also might not be, depending on what this says. Okay, there we go. There's some progress. I don't know if that's visible. This is pretty subtle. It's still, it started out easily 1/8 of an inch, and now we're close to a 1/16 of an inch. So maybe that's the ticket. Is it just either needed to hit the slapper a whole bunch more times, or we just needed more concentrated force near the edges. So let's see if we can get a little bit more. Let's see if we can. Yeah, it's getting harder to feel that dent on the back side. So I can see why it's coming out. The hammer not on the center. Ooh, there we go. That's a huge. That's what was going on. You can see the dent is it's actually gone in the center, but I'm a little bit low here. So that's worth getting a close up there. So you can kind of see center of that dent is now right up to the straight edge, and there's just some extra spot around it that's going on. So what was happening is that my dolly is so thick, is this thick, and I was hitting on the side of the circle, which is still on the dolly. And so what I needed to do is you really need to kind of shift this dolly over. It's actually on that side. And hit this side off dolly so that this dent can come out, and this edge, the hammer can kind of hold that edge in while the dolly is pushing it out. And so that's, I think, what I was doing wrong there. So that we'll have to figure out how we're going to smooth that. I'm assuming we'll just do the same thing over here and get that smooth. And I think we still got some body filler there. So once I get a little closer, we'll kind of sand it off, and we'll use that shrinking disc that I referenced earlier to kind of show what that looks like. It really kind of planishes the surface. Not planishes because that's not the right word. It burnishes, I guess, is probably the better word. So you can kind of see what's high and what's low, and it doesn't take away any material, or it takes away a very, very little material. So you're not sanding, sand through the panel. So let's try that. All right, let's see. See if we could raise up that spot up above there. I don't know if you can hear, but you can hear kind of a low pitched hammer when I'm doing here. But then when I hit too close to on dolly, you can kind of hear the difference. It's kind of a higher pitch. Yeah. That's directly below here is where that dolly on the backside is. And so what you want to, if you want trying to move the metal outward, you got to shift the dolly this direction so you're hitting off dolly. You want to hear that kind of louder, deeper noise that's not pinging right on there. So let's see if nope, we don't want that. Alright, let's see where we're at. Hey, that's pretty good. We're pretty high dent wise. I wonder, we might be able to use the shrinker now and see if we can get that, kind of show you what's going on. And I guess this lubricates the surface a little bit so you don't get sparks or damage to the metal. Alright, so this is the shrinking disc. It's mounted on a grinder. This is a small disc, and they make a larger one that can cover bigger surfaces, but I think this one's probably okay enough for this smaller surface. And the idea is that we'll just go for it. So I don't know if you can see, but there's some dark spots where the disc has actually contacted the metal and ground away from the ink from the Sharpie away. And so I can tell that I've got a high spot here and I've got a high spot kind of on this crown here. And so let's see how much of a high spot that is. It's actually pretty decent actually here. You can see one of the things you have to do is you have to wait, before you start measuring the flatness, you have to wait until it is cool, because as the metal cools, it'll kind of shrink. And when you have an outward crowned surface and it heats up, the metal will expand. And so that outward crown will become bigger as it heats up. And so what that disc is doing is it's heating up only the high spot really, really hot. And there's also a little bit of pressure from the disc that's pushing it back in. So when it's hot and then it starts to cool again, it'll go down a little farther than where it was when it started. So that's kind of what's going on there. And so I think if we get a little bit of just a little bit of spray water with some soap in it, and kind of clean it off. That's pretty cool. So let's see. There's still a little bit of a. So it's pretty high. Pretty high. So there's still a big, decent hot spot there. So we'll get it. We'll do it a little bit more here. I think the amount of heat that he says is about right, is just to where it will start to steam or boil water. So it's about 212 degrees. It's not enough to make it red hot, but it's enough to get it pretty hot that it should bite your fingers if you're touching it, at least on the sensitive part. But this is not a huge dent, so I don't want to go too much. So So this is not sanding the metal. That's what I wanted to make sure that was obvious. It's still a little bit warm here, but we'll see how close it is. The other nice thing is that I'm not having to wear a big dust mask. This is not creating any dust or anything. It's just creating a little bit of friction and heat. And so that's a little better. It's a little lower. Got a decent sized crown right there. I did a little too much with my hammer and dolly. I wonder if I can just do That's pretty straight coming out of here. We'll have to figure out what we're doing out here, because once I get into this surface here isn't correct either, so I don't want to trust too much over here. I can do that. Low again, because then I'll just have to come and pull it back out. That looks pretty good up there. It's still a little bit high up there, so let's see. I also don't want to do much down here. There's no point in shrinking everything down here because this still needs to be separately repaired. I'm just trying to focus on this dent and kind of that offshoot up there that was going on. So definitely got the little dent out, so now we're just getting it a little lower. Okay. Let's try one more pass at least and see if we can. Heating up, I can really feel this high spot crowning out a lot. So as it's heating up, it's crowning out, and hopefully I think the pressure on that disc is providing a little bit of shrinking action as the metal gets forced back down into itself when it's hot. And so, ooh, that's hot. Let's see. I don't know that the water does anything, it just speeds up how long you have to wait for it to cool down. It also kind of cleans off any dirt things, I guess, so it's not a totally useless thing, but it's still pretty warm, so we'll give it a minute. Alright, so it's finally cooled down a bit, and I got another straight edge to kind of take a more serious look at where everything is. And what I'm noticing is that it's actually pretty decently straight from the center of that dent forward. And so what I'm finding is that this damage, or this previous repair here that I've done is much lower than it needs to be. And so if I get a straight edge here, and I'll move the camera, but if I get a straight edge here that runs across the door and that dent, I get a pretty decent flat. It's pretty decently straight, although it's pretty decently straight, except for this spot here is a little bit high, and this spot in here is really low by 1/8 of an inch at least. This here looks like it might be a 32nd or so too high, so I'm going to get some Sharpie over here and see if we can kind of shrink both of these spots together. I might not put so much heat over here because this looks pretty good. It's just this spot kind of here that looks a little high right now. So I'd like to be sure that this dent is actually out before I kind of give up and start going on to other stuff. So I think maybe it makes sense to start from one edge and go out. Don't know if it makes sense, but that's what we're going to do, and we're going to see. So may also need to it may make sense to start pushing this out too, but we'll see if we can shrink that a little bit to get it to be pretty straight here. Safety glasses. Kind of interesting running the marker over that. I didn't even feel any dip, so that's pretty good. I'm gonna need a fatter, kind of a bigger nib marker. So that's too fine point. All right, here we go. thing that I just remembered that I needed to do is that this shrinking disc really needs to be on clean metal, and so I should not have been getting into the paint or even some of this body filler and kind of just gunk that's still on there. That really needs to be taken off before I do much more on there, because I don't. The disc will get kind of gummed up and burnished. You can kind of see. Yeah, it's a little bit. It's got a little bit of stuff on there. You don't want that stuff, so I'll have to kind of clean that off too before I use it anymore. So, but you can kind of see that it's not taking off any metal. It's just creating a bunch of heat and just flattening it down a little bit. And so we'll see. Where's my ruler? Did it fall down already? Yep. It's actually much better already. And it's still a little bit warm, so I think as it cools down, it may even shrink farther. Yeah, you can kind of see. Here, let's see. Let's see if we can get really down on this. And so you can kind of see it's pretty close. You can see it starts to get low right about here where my finger is, and then it gets low out there. So it's really serious dent here, but I'm expecting that because that's where that weld seam is. And then there's a little bit of a high spot just right here, and maybe a little one right there. So there's still a little bit of feels like it's about cooled off. There's no temperature differential here, so it's pretty good. We're not gonna call it done yet, but I think we may need to start addressing. Well, I guess maybe the question is the dent out? So that's what we were really trying to accomplish today. So let's see. The dent here is pretty good. Here's a little high. There's a little high. Little high. Still a little high. Used to be a little low, so I guess we're in a good spot. I wonder if hammering that down. I'm afraid of hammering it. I'll try going at it with the disc one more time, just in this spot here. And we'll, all right. Alright, so this is finally cooled down, and I'm looking at it. Actually, the high spot went down a little bit, but what I'm realizing, actually it went down, it's perfect here. Not too bad, although there's a little bit of high spot. What I'm realizing, first bit of learning here, is that I don't know that I can just fix one little spot and leave everything else really bad. It's because there's, you know, 1/8 of an inch low here, and the more I work this, I'm still missing. I've still got a big gap here between this edge, and so what I'm thinking I might like to do instead is start working on some of this dent here to get it closer to where I need it to be, because I can't really fix this side of the dent because it's affected by, I can't fix this dent when this surface is kind of rolling up all the way to that spot. If I only cared about what's going on here, I'm pretty close. There's just a little bit of a high spot there, and this dent is actually probably right about where it needs to be, metal-wise, and maybe even a little bit low. So yeah, see, I kind of need to think I'm going to have to fix some of this stuff here. So that might be the next course of action here. Alright, so now that I got this first dent and some of the little spots around it much closer than where they were when I started, I'm going to call this first video done and get on to the next 2 or 3 that I think it's probably going to take to get this this one section of the fender done. But I wanted to share a few things I learned. The first one is that make sure whatever any fender, door, or any part on the vehicle is aligned with everything else on the vehicle. Like, is it mounted properly? Does it have some major damage that's going to prevent you from lining it up with anything else, or figuring out where dents are actually existing and where high spots are existing. You know, just basic thing. Is the panel on there, and is there anything majorly wrong with it that it should be replaced or realigned, or things like that. So the second thing was, there's rarely a time that I need to hammer on dolly, and by that I mean if I've got a crown that I'm trying to take out, I don't necessarily want to just put a flat dolly on it and hammer the crown down against it, trying to beat it into the shape of whatever's on the dolly. Because what that does is that actually, if I have a crown and I start hammering it on the dolly, that's going to stretch the metal even more, and so that crown is going to grow, although it might dent in here, but that extra metal's got to go somewhere else, so it's going to pop up around somewhere else, which is kind of what I could see around that golf ball dent that I have. And so don't do that. There's a few specific cases to do that. That's the next one. Is the number 3 is, if you do want to increase the crown, like if you got a low spot on a crown and you do want to increase it just a little bit, you can actually. What you do is you hammer on dolly, and what you're essentially doing is pinching the sheet metal between this dolly and this hammer so that it stretches it a little bit in microscopic amounts every time you hit the hammer. You know, you have to hit a whole bunch of times and kind of planishing it, and that crown will grow just a little bit. And so it takes some fine tuning and a little bit of feel where you can hear it when it's on the dolly and not on the dolly. That's kind of a fun realization that, oh, okay, now I almost sort of think I might get what's going on here. So, and those are my 3 things that I've learned in 3 days here. So if you like what you see and you want to see some more and what's going on next, go ahead and click the like and subscribe, and you'll find out when the next video is coming out. So thanks.